He will accept his award from the Secretary General of the United Nations and then speak to you.
Well, thank you, Richard. One thing I think you left out of that introduction, and didn't that seem like that was more about him than me? Well, one thing that he left out was that, you remember that time when my agent had to call security to get you out of the casting office for the Entourage movie? Remember that? He was desperate. He really, really wanted that. Sorry, didn't work out. Hello, excellencies, distinguished delegates, friends. I'm so very happy to be here. And thanks to UNCA for this honor. I'm pleased to be in your company and together communicate the work of the United Nations and the current state of our shared environment and global communities. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the staff of the UN Environment Program with whom I've had the great privilege of working with as a Goodwill Ambassador to raise global awareness, yes, around the crisis that is plastic pollution. They do such an incredible job and inspire me every day. Your unyielding efforts to stem the flow of plastic pollution into our world's rivers, lakes, and ocean is truly, truly inspirational. And of course, the journalists here who pursue stories that help the world understand the complex systems within which we all coexist. We need communicators like yourselves to inspire us with stories of success, to hold us accountable with reports based on fact, and bring together all of us through a shared understanding of the state of our world. My personal journey in becoming an environmental advocate started in my youth, but also through stories from my mother, who told me of our Native American ancestors and their relationship in harmony with nature and its cycles. And here I am still telling stories, but this one of a lonely whale. Richard, you got your wish, because I'm going to tell the story. The namesake of my ocean conservation organization, whose story has inspired a movement based on connection. He is a real whale, a real creature who travels the vast ocean singing a different language than all other whales. His voice is 52 hertz, totally unique to himself and different than all other whales who speak generally at 15 to 20 hertz. And despite his constant calling, seeking connection, he has never once received a response. And as humans, we feel for him. Our hearts open with compassion for his loneliness. For he may not be understood by others of his kind, but he speaks to something fundamental, something intrinsic within all of us. He isn't even human, and yet suddenly we want to help. This is the power of allegory. So I founded an organization bearing his name, Lonely Whale, whose mission is to make connections to one another and to the ocean, our shared source of life, and build strong bonds of empathy in order to protect all marine wildlife through human collaboration, action, and storytelling. As communicators, we must inform minds, but smart brains are often too satisfied with themselves, arrogant in what they know. So, we must also seek to move hearts, because it is emotion that drives action. We know the science. Climate change is real, and our oceans are choking on 10 million tons of plastic each year, amongst other horrifying statistics. We know these figures, but what Lonely Whale communicates is beyond facts and data. And speaking of facts, you may be asking yourself, really, is a whale even capable of being lonely? Maybe he's a loner. Maybe he likes being alone. Maybe he just has a lisp. Where's the proof? Scientists have hesitated to anthropomorphize the lonely whale, and perhaps we shouldn't speculate. But the question isn't if he has the capacity to feel what humans do, but instead, do we humans have the humanity to care ourselves for his suffering? Do we have the compassion for the plight of whales, lonely or not, who are today quite factually washing up on shores filled with plastic? Do we care about man-made climate change? How it affects the poorest and most vulnerable amongst us, not just animals, but also our fellow human beings. Do we connect? Do we care? Yes, we do. What the lonely whale can't communicate to his own kind, he speaks to us and to our hearts. What we learn from the story of the lonely whale is that the capacity for human compassion can reach well beyond our own species, transcending our destructive habits and reach deeply into what really makes us thrive in life, our shared need for connection, for family, and for home. And we understand that we are not unlike lonely whale. We too are calling out desperately for connection. And we share something in common with all marine wildlife, whose home is now facing dire threat from climate change and pollution. And our families, our communities are torn apart, politically divided, speaking different languages, and desperate for reunification with one another, with the earth, and with a shared set of values that point us to common principles, grounded in prosperity and an environmental future. There is no better place to find the spirit of lonely whale than here at the UN with all of you. Journalists telling stories, calling out and speaking truth, even when perhaps it feels like no one is listening or that deniers are just too loud. And we must not forget that it was the UN who offered up a global framework through the Sustainable Development Goals to come together in a demonstration of radical collaboration and push us closer to a unified goal of global environmental sustainability. This week marks an inspirational moment in togetherness and a powerful step towards achieving the SDGs with nations from around the world uniting again around the Paris Agreement. Facts, science, and the understanding just beyond our calculators, the deeper truth of how interconnected our world truly is, brought these great leaders to the same table to communicate to the world their commitments to our shared earth. For they understand that nature in peril knows no borders. It doesn't discriminate against countries or cities or even continents. We are truly in this together. We are all global advocates. So call out at 52 Hertz or speak in whatever unique voice you have and tell the stories that root us in our humanity and compassion for each other and the natural world. We all have the power to take action for our environment and to communicate those actions to our friends, our loved ones, and the world. We are all global advocates. Tonight, I remain humbled in my position to help communicate the work of those who remain unwavering in their efforts to turn the tide on plastic pollution, safeguard the rights of all people, and lift up our world's children out of poverty. And I'm honored to stand alongside some of the most inspirational leaders of our time who are with us here tonight. Of course, including Amal Clooney and all of you journalists. So thank you, Excellencies, for this honor. And thank you for all that you do to give a voice to our earth and those fighting to protect for future generations. Thank you very much.